I'm Sophia, 26, a pediatric nurse whose perfect world crumbled when my brother Marcus brought home the woman who would nearly destroy our family. What started as concern for my brother's rushed engagement turned into a nightmare that left me hospitalized and fighting for the truth. Before I tell you how one woman's manipulation tore apart a bond one thought was unbreakable, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. This story changed everything I believed about family, trust, and the lengths people will go to get what they want. Growing up in Denver, Marcus and I were more than siblings. We were best friends. With only 4 years between us, we navigated childhood as a team. When our parents went through their bitter divorce when I was 8 and Marcus was 12, we made a pact that no matter what happened, we'd always have each other's backs. Our dad, Robert, moved across town while our mom, Catherine, kept the house. Those early years after the split were chaotic, with custody battles and financial stress, but Marcus and I created our own little world of stability. Marcus became my protector in ways that went beyond typical big brother duties. When kids at school made cruel jokes about our parents' messy divorce, he'd walk me to class, making sure I never faced their taunts alone. During those difficult teenage years when I struggled with anxiety and self-doubt, he was the one who sat with me during panic attacks, teaching me breathing exercises he'd learned from the school counselor. We developed different interests as we grew older. Marcus excelled in soccer and debate team, while I found my passion in art and volunteering at the local animal shelter. Despite our different paths, we maintained our deep connection. Our shared bedroom wall became a message board where we'd leave each other notes of encouragement before big tests or important events. After high school, we both stayed in Colorado for college. Marcus studied business at University of Colorado Boulder, while I pursued nursing at Colorado State. Even though we were hours apart, we texted constantly and coordinated our breaks to spend maximum time together. When I had my wisdom teeth removed during sophomore year, Marcus drove up immediately with ice cream and downloaded all the movies I'd been wanting to watch. Post-graduation brought us both back to the Denver area. I found my dream job in the pediatric ward at Children's Hospital Colorado, while Marcus landed a marketing position with a growing tech startup. We lived about 20 minutes apart and established our sacred tradition: Saturday morning hikes followed by brunch at Mountain View Cafe. These weekly meetups became our sanctuary, where we'd share everything from work stress to relationship drama. Marcus had been through a serious relationship with his college girlfriend Emma that lasted 3 years. When she decided to move to California for graduate school, without including him in her plans, he was devastated. I spent months helping him process the heartbreak, listening to him work through feelings of abandonment and uncertainty about his future. When my own relationship with David fell apart after 2 years, he couldn't handle my demanding work schedule at the hospital. Marcus returned the favor, showing up at my apartment with takeout and terrible romantic comedies. "Promise me something," Marcus said during one of our hikes about 6 months after my breakup. "No matter who we end up with, we'll always be honest with each other about red flags." Sometimes people in love can't see what's right in front of them. I readily agreed, squeezing his hand as we paused to watch the sunrise over the mountains. Always honest, even when it's hard to hear. That promise would be tested sooner than either of us imagined. Last fall, Marcus mentioned he'd met someone at a networking event. His usual measured approach to dating seemed to accelerate overnight. Her name was Victoria, a finance consultant who'd recently moved to Denver from Chicago. Their first coffee date turned into a 6-hour conversation that ended with a walk around downtown. By their second date, they were making weekend plans together. "There's something special about her, Soph," he told me, using the nickname only family was allowed to use. "She's ambitious, sophisticated, everything I've been looking for. It's like she understands my goals in a way no one else has." I was happy to see Marcus excited about someone new, but surprised by the intensity so early on. He'd always been careful about opening his heart after Emma. When he canceled our Saturday hike to spend the weekend at Victoria's apartment, I felt a small knot of unease, but dismissed it as normal new relationship behavior. The weeks that followed were filled with constant Victoria updates. Our texts became one-sided, with Marcus sharing every detail of their dates, their conversations, their future plans. Our hiking tradition became sporadic, often canceled last minute because Victoria had surprised him with tickets to something or planned a romantic getaway. When Victoria finally joined us for one of our Saturday brunches, I was curious to meet the woman who had captured my brother's attention so completely. She arrived looking polished and professional even on a weekend morning, designer jeans, perfectly styled blonde hair, and an expensive handbag that probably cost more than my monthly student loan payment. "Sophia," she exclaimed, embracing me with practiced warmth. "Marcus talks about you constantly. The famous sister who saves children's lives. You must have so many heartwarming stories." Our conversation flowed smoothly as she asked thoughtful questions about my work and shared entertaining anecdotes about her consulting projects. She seemed genuinely interested in my career, remembering details Marcus had shared about particularly challenging cases I'd handled. Yet something felt rehearsed about her responses, as if she'd prepared for this interaction rather than simply having it. The first concerning moment came when Marcus started telling a story about our disastrous family camping trip when we were teenagers. Victoria gently placed her hand on his arm, interrupting with a smile. "Honey, you're getting animated again. Remember what we discussed about professional presentation?" Her tone was loving but firm, and Marcus immediately adjusted his posture, continuing the story with notably less enthusiasm. Later, when our mom called Marcus during brunch, Victoria whispered something in his ear before he answered. The conversation was brief and somewhat cold, unusual for Marcus, who typically chatted with our parents for at least 10 minutes when they called. "Everything okay with Mom?" I asked after he hung up. "Fine," he replied, but Victoria answered before he could elaborate. "We're trying to establish better boundaries with family interruptions during our quality time together. It's healthier for everyone." The comment struck me as odd, but I didn't want to start drama during our first meeting. Over the following weeks, I noticed more changes in Marcus. His spontaneous nature seemed to be disappearing. He required advance notice for any plans and often checked with Victoria before confirming. His responses to group texts came hours later, and when he did reply, his messages sounded formal and unlike his usual casual tone. When our friend Jake invited everyone to his birthday celebration, Marcus initially said he'd be there. The day of the party, he texted that he and Victoria had other commitments. Later, I learned from mutual friends that Victoria had told people Marcus preferred quiet evenings over juvenile party scenes. The most troubling change was in Marcus himself. The confident, quick-witted brother I'd known my entire life seemed muted around Victoria. He sought her approval before speaking, edited his stories mid-sentence if she looked disapproving, and had developed a habit of checking his phone constantly as if monitoring her messages. During one of our increasingly rare one-on-one conversations, I gently expressed concern. "You seem different lately. More reserved." "Victoria's helping me be more professional," he replied defensively. "She says my casual approach might be holding back my career advancement. But you've always been successful being yourself. Your company promoted you twice last year." He looked uncomfortable. "Victoria has experience in corporate environments I've never been exposed to. She's helping me reach my potential." The conversation left me uneasy, but I tried to respect his choices while staying available as a sister. Then came the phone call that changed everything. On a Thursday evening in March, Marcus called with barely contained excitement. "Soph, I need to tell you something incredible. I proposed to Victoria last night, and she said yes." The room seemed to spin slightly. "Proposed? Marcus, you've only been dating for 5 months. I know it seems fast, but when you find your person, timing doesn't matter. We're perfect together." "Have you talked about important things? Future goals, financial expectations, where you want to live?" "Of course we have. We want the same things: success, stability, a beautiful life together." His tone grew cooler. "I hoped you'd be excited for me." "I am happy if you're happy," I said carefully. "It's just such a big step so quickly." "Victoria was right," he muttered, almost to himself. "Right about what?" "Nothing. Look, we're having an engagement party next weekend. I hope you'll be there to celebrate with us." After hanging up, I sat in my apartment feeling deeply unsettled. Something about the proposal timing and Marcus's defensive responses didn't sit right. The engagement party was held at an upscale restaurant downtown. Victoria looked stunning in a navy cocktail dress, the large diamond ring catching light as she gestured. She worked the room expertly, thanking guests for coming and sharing the story of Marcus's romantic proposal. What disturbed me was watching my brother during the party. He seemed like a supporting character in his own engagement celebration. Victoria answered questions about their relationship, their wedding plans, their future goals. When someone asked Marcus directly about his feelings, he'd glance at Victoria before responding, as if seeking permission to share his own emotions. During dinner, Victoria stood to make a toast. "Marcus and I are so grateful for all of you being here tonight. We're especially thankful for family who support our happiness without trying to interfere or create drama." The comments seemed directed at me, though I hadn't said anything critical to anyone. Several people glanced in my direction, making me wonder what Victoria had told them about my reaction to their engagement. Later, when I tried to congratulate Marcus privately, Victoria appeared beside us almost immediately. "Isn't this wonderful? Marcus is so lucky to have found someone who truly understands his ambitions." "We're both lucky," Marcus started to say, but Victoria continued. "I've been telling him how important it is to surround ourselves with people who celebrate our joy rather than questioning our choices." The message was clear, and it stung. I managed to smile and excuse myself, spending the rest of the evening feeling like an outsider at my own brother's engagement party. Over the following weeks, my access to Marcus became increasingly limited. Our Saturday traditions ended entirely, replaced by wedding planning activities that didn't include me. When I texted asking about his week, responses came hours later with short, impersonal updates. The breaking point came when I learned from our mother that Marcus and Victoria were planning to elope in 2 months. Our family had always imagined Marcus would want a traditional celebration with everyone present. When I called to ask about it, Victoria answered his phone. "Oi, Sofia. Marcus is in the shower. About the elopement, we've decided intimate is better. Too much family involvement creates unnecessary stress. But Marcus always talked about wanting our dad to be his best man and having a big celebration." People change. Marcus realizes now that what matters is our commitment to each other, not putting on a show for others. When Marcus finally called me back later, he seemed scripted. "Victoria and I want to keep things simple. We're not trying to hurt anyone's feelings." "This doesn't sound like you, Marcus. Remember when we were kids and you used to plan your whole wedding? The music, the dancing, how you wanted Dad to give a speech." A long pause. "That was childish fantasy. I'm an adult now with mature priorities." The formal language, so unlike Marcus's usual casual way of speaking, confirmed my worst fears. Victoria wasn't just influencing his decisions, she was changing his fundamental personality. I made the difficult decision to investigate Victoria's background. Using professional networking sites and public records, I began researching the woman my brother was planning to marry. What I discovered was alarming. Victoria's LinkedIn profile claimed employment at firms that had no record of her. Her claimed MBA from Northwestern couldn't be verified through their alumni directory. The Chicago address she'd given Marcus as her previous residence belonged to a building that had been demolished 2 years earlier. More disturbing were the court records I found. Victoria had been involved in multiple civil lawsuits in Illinois, breach of contract cases with previous landlords, credit card fraud allegations, and one sealed case that appeared to involve identity theft. As I dug deeper, I discovered that Victoria Chen wasn't even her real name. Public records showed she was actually Victoria Chong, and she had outstanding warrants in Illinois for financial fraud. With trembling hands, I compiled everything into a folder on my laptop. The evidence painted a picture of someone who had built her entire relationship with Marcus on lies. I knew I had to tell him, but also knew he was unlikely to believe me in his current state. Victoria had successfully isolated him from friends and family who might have noticed these red flags. I was probably his last connection to objective reality. I arranged to meet Marcus at Riverside Park, the place where we'd had serious conversations throughout our lives. I texted him asking to meet by the old oak tree where we used to climb as kids, hoping the familiar setting might help him hear what I had to say. I need to share something important with you, I wrote. It's about Victoria, and I know you won't want to hear it, but I love you too much to stay silent. His response came quickly. If this is about the elopement again, I don't want to hear it. It's not about the wedding timeline. Please just meet me. 1 hour. He agreed, though reluctantly. I arrived early, organizing the evidence in a folder and rehearsing how to present information that would shatter my brother's world. When Marcus appeared on the walking path, I noticed he looked stressed and kept checking his phone. Victoria doesn't know I'm here, he said as he approached. She thinks I'm at the gym. The fact that he felt the need to lie to his fiancée about meeting his own sister confirmed everything I suspected about their relationship. Marcus, I need you to look at something with an open mind, I began, pulling out the folder. I've discovered some things about Victoria that you need to know before you marry her. His expression immediately hardened. If you're about to show me some conspiracy theory about the woman I love, please just look. I opened the folder, showing him the employment verification failures, the discrepancies in her educational background, the court records showing a pattern of fraud. Marcus glanced at the documents, but pushed them away. This is insane, Sophia. You've been investigating my fiancée, like some kind of stalker? I've been protecting my brother from someone who's been lying to him about fundamental aspects of her life. These could be fake, or mistakes, or coincidences. His voice rose. I can't believe you'd go this far because you're jealous of my happiness. This isn't jealousy. Look at this. I showed him the court documents with Victoria's real name. She's not even who she says she is. Marcus stood up abruptly. I don't want to hear any more of this. Marcus, please. I'm begging you to at least verify some of this information independently. Call Northwestern, check with the companies she claims to have worked for. What I'm going to do is go home and tell Victoria that my sister has completely lost her mind. His words cut deep. Maybe she was right about you being unable to accept that I've moved on with my life. What has she said about me? That you've always been possessive of our relationship. That you resent any woman who comes between us. That you'd probably try to sabotage our engagement. The manipulation was even deeper than I'd realized. Victoria had been preparing Marcus for this exact conversation, preemptively discrediting anything I might say. Marcus, you've known me your entire life. Have I ever lied to you? Have I ever tried to hurt you or sabotage your happiness? For a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker in his eyes. The brother who knew me, who had trusted me through everything, was still in there somewhere. But then his phone buzzed with a text message. After reading it, his expression closed off again. I have to go. Victoria's waiting for me. Promise me you'll at least think about what I've shown you. Don't just dismiss it. He looked at me with something like pity. I promise I'll think about getting you some help. This obsession isn't healthy, Soph. With that, he walked away, leaving me alone with the evidence that could save him if only he'd been willing to see it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the uncertainty I'd glimpsed in Marcus's eyes before Victoria's text arrived. Despite his harsh words, part of him had wavered. Maybe there was still hope. The next morning, I decided to try a different approach. Instead of confronting Marcus again, I would find a way to present the evidence to Victoria directly. If she truly loved Marcus, she would want to clear up any misunderstandings. If she was the manipulator I suspected, her reaction would reveal the truth. I knew Victoria often had coffee at the trendy cafe near her apartment on Sunday mornings. Marcus had mentioned it during one of our increasingly rare conversations. I decided to accidentally encounter her there. I arrived at the cafe early, positioning myself at a table with a clear view of the entrance. When Victoria walked in at her usual time, I waved as if surprised to see her.
Victoria.
What a coincidence. Would you like to join me? She approached with her characteristic polished smile, though I caught a flash of something else in her eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or calculation. Sophia, how lovely to see you. Though I should mention, Marcus told me about your concerns regarding our relationship. That's actually what I wanted to talk about, I said as she sat down. I think there might be some misunderstandings that we should clear up. Oh. Her tone remained pleasant, but her posture grew rigid. I pulled out a simplified version of my evidence, just the employment and education discrepancies. Marcus showed you what I'd found, right? I'm hoping you can help explain these inconsistencies, so I can put my worries to rest. Victoria glanced at the documents, her expression not showing the confusion or concern I would have expected from someone being falsely accused. Instead, she looked calculating, as if determining the best response. "These are clearly fabricated," she said finally. "I'm disappointed that you'd go to such lengths to try to break up Marcus and me. They're not fabricated. These are official records from—" "Stop." Her voice carried a cold authority I'd never heard before. "I know exactly what you're doing, and it won't work." The mask was slipping. This wasn't a warm, professional woman who had charmed everyone at the engagement party. "I'm trying to protect my brother from someone who's been lying to him." "Your brother doesn't need protection from me. He needs protection from you." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "You're pathetic, you know that? So desperate to keep Marcus all to yourself that you destroy his happiness." I stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time the person Victoria really was beneath her carefully constructed facade. "He's told me all about your history of being possessive, how you've sabotaged his previous relationships, how you can't stand the thought of him being with anyone else." "That's not true, and you know it."
Doi.
"Because from where I sit, it looks like you're exactly the jealous, controlling sister I was warned about." I realized this confrontation was a mistake. Victoria was too skilled at manipulation to be trapped by evidence or reason with. She had already rewritten the narrative in her mind, casting herself as the victim and me as the villain. "I want you to stay away from Marcus," she continued, her pleasant demeanor completely abandoned now. "Stop calling, stop texting, stop trying to interfere in our relationship. He's my brother. I'm not going to abandon him just because you're uncomfortable with our relationship. Then you'll regret it." The threat was delivered calmly, like a business transaction. I've worked too hard to get where I am to let some jealous little girl ruin everything. She stood up, leaving her untouched coffee on the table. "Marcus is mine now. The sooner you accept that, the better off everyone will be." After she left, I sat in the cafe feeling shaken. The woman I'd just spoken with bore no resemblance to the charming person Marcus thought he was marrying. But how could I make him see what I'd just witnessed? That evening, I made the difficult decision to call our parents. If I couldn't reach Marcus, maybe they could. I arranged to meet them at their house the next evening, promising to explain everything in person. My parents listened in stunned silence as I presented all the evidence I'd gathered. My mother's face grew pale as she reviewed the court documents, while my father's expression darkened with each revelation. "This is serious, Sophia," my dad said finally. "If even half of this is accurate, Marcus could be in real danger, financially, emotionally, maybe even physically. We have to try to reach him," my mother added. "But carefully. If Victoria has isolated him as thoroughly as you describe, confronting him directly might push him further away." We agreed that they would try to schedule a casual dinner with Marcus, hoping to create an opportunity for honest conversation without Victoria present. I would continue gathering evidence while staying in the background. 2 days later, my parents called Marcus, inviting him to dinner at their favorite restaurant, just the three of them like old times. According to my mother, Marcus seemed hesitant but eventually agreed, saying Victoria had a work commitment that evening anyway. The dinner was scheduled for Friday night. I spent the day anxious, hoping my parents could succeed where I had failed. They called me immediately afterward, both sounding deeply disturbed. "He's not the same person," my mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "He was distant, formal, kept checking his phone constantly. When we tried to talk about his childhood or shared memories, he seemed uncomfortable, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing." My father took the phone. We tried to bring up our concerns gently, but he shut down immediately. Said Victoria had warned him that we might try to interfere because we were jealous of their happiness. She's been preparing him for this, I realized, probably for weeks. "The worst part," my mother continued, "was when I asked about the wedding plans. He said they were eloping next week. Next week, Sophia. No family, no friends, Just the two of them and a justice of the peace. My heart sank. Victoria was accelerating the timeline, probably because she sensed the walls closing in. Did you show him any of the evidence? We tried, but he wouldn't look at it. Said we were all conspiring against the woman he loves, that Victoria was right about our family being unsupportive. After hanging up, I realized I was running out of options. The elopement was scheduled for the following Friday, just 6 days away. Once they were married, Victoria would have legal access to Marcus's finances, his insurance, everything. And given her history of fraud, I suspected that was exactly what she was after. I made a desperate decision. I would go to the police with what I'd found. Even if they couldn't stop the wedding, maybe they could investigate Victoria's outstanding warrants and buy us time to reach Marcus. The next morning, I visited the Denver Police Department with my folder of evidence. Detective Rivera, a patient woman with kind eyes, listened to my story and reviewed the documents I'd compiled. This is concerning, she agreed. The identity discrepancies and outstanding warrants are definitely grounds for investigation. However, you need to understand that your brother is an adult making his own choices. We can't prevent someone from getting married based on family concerns alone. But the fraud charges, the fake identity, surely that's enough to at least question her? We can investigate, but these processes take time. If they're planning to elope in a few days. She didn't need to finish the sentence. We both knew time was running out. Detective Rivera did agree to run Victoria's information through their database and contact Illinois authorities about the outstanding warrants. She also suggested I consult with a lawyer about potentially pursuing a restraining order, though she warned that would be difficult without evidence of direct threats. I left the police station feeling somewhat hopeful, but still desperate. I had 3 days to save my brother from making the biggest mistake of his life. That afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. When I answered, a woman's voice asked, "Is this Sophia, Marcus's sister?" "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Rachel. I was engaged to someone I think you know as Victoria Chen." My heart stopped. What? I saw the missing person report your family filed, and Victoria's photo looked familiar. I think she might be the same woman who destroyed my life last year. Rachel agreed to meet me that evening at a coffee shop downtown. When she arrived, I immediately saw she was still recovering from whatever Victoria had put her through. She looked tired, wary, like someone who'd been through trauma. Her name wasn't Victoria when I knew her, Rachel began. She called herself Veronica Chase. We met at a professional conference in Phoenix. She was charming, successful, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. The story Rachel told was heartbreakingly familiar. A whirlwind romance, quick engagement, systematic isolation from friends and family. Victoria, or Veronica, had convinced Rachel to combine their finances, take out loans for wedding expenses, and cut ties with anyone who questioned their relationship. The manipulation was so gradual, I didn't realize what was happening until it was almost too late, Rachel explained. She had me convinced that everyone in my life was jealous of our love, that I could only trust her. How did you finally see the truth? She made a mistake. Left her laptop open with emails to another woman, someone she was running the same con on simultaneously. When I confronted her, she became violent. Rachel rolled up her sleeve, showing me a faded scar on her forearm. She attacked me with a kitchen knife when I threatened to call the police. I managed to get away and spent 2 weeks in hiding before I felt safe enough to go home. Did you report her? I tried, but she disappeared. Cleaned out our joint accounts and vanished. The police said it happens more often than people think. Predators who target successful, lonely people take what they can and move on to the next victim. I showed Rachel the evidence I'd compiled about Victoria's current identity. She nodded grimly. This matches her pattern exactly. New name, new backstory, same tactics. My brother's supposed to marry her on Friday. Rachel's expression grew urgent. You have to stop him. She nearly destroyed me financially and emotionally. If I hadn't discovered her scheme when I did, I would have lost everything. I've tried everything. He won't listen to me, won't look at evidence, won't even spend time with family anymore. Then you have to find a way to make him see who she really is. Because once they're married, she'll have access to everything, and people like her don't stop until they've taken it all. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. If I couldn't reach Marcus through words or evidence, I would have to show him the truth directly. I knew Victoria's schedule well enough from Marcus's previous descriptions. Every Thursday evening, she went to yoga class at the studio near her apartment. I decided to follow her, hoping to document something, anything, that might prove her deception. Thursday evening arrived gray and drizzly. I parked across from Victoria's apartment building, waiting for her to emerge for her yoga class. At exactly 6:30, she appeared in designer athletic wear, carrying an expensive yoga mat. Instead of heading toward the yoga studio, however, she walked in the opposite direction to a small dive bar 3 blocks away. Curious, I followed at a distance. Through the bar's front window, I watched Victoria approach a middle-aged man sitting alone at a corner table. They embraced like old friends, and she sat down across from him. Their conversation appeared intense, with Victoria occasionally pulling documents from her purse. I managed to position myself at a nearby bus stop where I could observe without being seen. After about an hour, the man handed Victoria an envelope, which she quickly tucked into her bag. They shook hands, and Victoria left. My heart raced as I realized what I might have witnessed. Was Victoria meeting with someone about false documents? Financial schemes? Whatever it was, it clearly wasn't yoga class. I followed her back toward her apartment, staying far enough behind to avoid detection. As she approached her building, she suddenly stopped and turned around, as if sensing she was being watched. Our eyes met across the street. Even from that distance, I could see her expression shift from confusion to recognition to cold fury. She changed direction, walking straight toward me with purposeful strides. I considered running, but knew that would only make things worse. When she reached me, her voice was low and dangerous. Following me now? That's a new low, even for you. You were just stalking me, which is illegal, by the way. I saw you go into that bar instead of yoga class. Who was that man you met with? Victoria's laugh was harsh. Not that it's any of your business, but that was my accountant. We were discussing tax preparation. The lie was so obvious it was almost insulting. Accountants don't meet clients in dive bars and hand over mysterious envelopes. Marcus deserves to know who he's really marrying, I said quietly. Marcus knows exactly who I am. It's you who's confused about reality. She stepped closer, and I caught something predatory in her expression. I warned you to stay away from us. He's my brother. I'm not going to abandon him just because you're uncomfortable with family relationships. Your obsession with Marcus is pathetic. Don't you have your own life? Your own relationships? The personal attack stung because it touched on insecurities I'd been struggling with. My demanding career had made dating difficult, and I had been feeling lonely lately. This isn't about me. It's about the lies you've told him and the person you really are. The person I really am, she repeated slowly, is someone who won't let a jealous little girl destroy what I've built. Without warning, she grabbed my purse, trying to wrestle it away from me. Let me see what other evidence you think you've collected. Let go. I pulled back, but Victoria's grip was surprisingly strong. Give me the bag, Sophia. No. We struggled in the middle of the sidewalk, Victoria's perfectly manicured nails digging into my wrists as she tried to force the purse from my hands. I managed to break free, but she lunged again, this time grabbing my shoulders and shaking me violently. Stop it, I shouted, hoping someone would notice and intervene. You want to know who I really am? Victoria's voice had become something inhuman. I'm someone who gets what I want, and what I want is for you to disappear from Marcus's life permanently. She shoved me backward with shocking force. I stumbled, my foot catching on an uneven section of sidewalk. Time seemed to slow as I fell, my head striking the concrete corner of a raised planter box with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through my skull as darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. Through the haze, I could hear Victoria's voice, but it sounded far away. Look what you made me do, she was saying, her tone eerily calm. This is what happens when you don't listen. I tried to respond, to move, but my body wasn't cooperating. Warm wetness trickled down the side of my face, and I vaguely understood it was blood. "If you ever bother us again," Victoria continued, kneeling beside me, "next time will be much worse. Stay away from Marcus. Stay away from our wedding. Stay away from our life." Footsteps approached, and I heard a man's voice calling out, "Hey, is everything okay over there?" Victoria's demeanor instantly transformed. "Oh, thank God someone's here." My future sister-in-law fell and hit her head. "Please help." The Good Samaritan, a jogger named Tom, immediately called 911 while Victoria put on a performance of concerned family member. She knelt beside me, stroking my hair gently while whispering threats only I could hear. "Remember what I told you," she murmured as sirens approached in the distance. "This was an accident. You fell because you were following me, harassing me. If you tell anyone otherwise, I'll make sure Marcus never speaks to you again." The paramedics arrived quickly, their professional assessment confirming what I already suspected: concussion, possible skull fracture, definite need for immediate medical attention. As they loaded me into the ambulance, Victoria climbed in beside me, playing the role of worried family member perfectly. "I feel so terrible," she told the paramedic. "Sophia has been under a lot of stress lately with work and personal issues." She was following me, trying to talk, and she just stumbled. I wanted to correct her lie, but speaking required more energy than I could muster. The paramedic nodded sympathetically while checking my vital signs. At the hospital, Victoria maintained her act while doctors examined me. CT scans revealed a moderate concussion and hairline skull fracture that would require careful monitoring. 6 stitches closed the gash on my temple. Throughout the medical procedures, Victoria stayed by my side, holding my hand and making concerned sounds at appropriate moments. To everyone else, she appeared to be exactly what she claimed, a caring future sister-in-law devastated by my accident. But during brief moments when medical staff stepped away, her mask slipped. "Remember," she whispered, "you fell. That's all anyone needs to know." My parents arrived several hours later, having been contacted by the hospital. The sight of their worry and fear made me want to tell them everything, but Victoria had positioned herself as my primary support, controlling the narrative of what had happened. She was so upset about our wedding, Victoria explained to my parents with perfect tears in her eyes. I think the stress of feeling left out of Marcus's life finally got to her. She was following me, trying to talk, but she seemed disoriented. When she fell, I was terrified. My mother squeezed my hand. "Sweetheart, what happened?" I looked at Victoria, who was watching me intently. The threat in her eyes was clear. I fell. I managed to say. "Hit my head." Victoria smiled, an expression of relief that my parents interpreted as concern for my well-being. "Where's Marcus?" I asked. "He's flying back from his business trip," Victoria replied quickly. "I called him as soon as it happened. He's so worried about you." But I knew Marcus hadn't been on any business trip. Victoria was buying herself time to craft the perfect story. The next morning, Marcus finally arrived at the hospital. His face was etched with worry as he approached my bed, but something in his expression seemed different, distant, almost cold. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his tone formal. "Better." "Marcus, I need to tell you what really—" "Victoria told me what happened," he interrupted. "She said you were following her, that you seemed unstable." My heart sank. Victoria had gotten to him first, shaped the narrative before I could defend myself. That's not what happened. She attacked me because I discovered. "Stop." Marcus's voice was sharp. "Just stop, Sophia." Victoria showed me the security footage from the street. "You were clearly following her. She tried to help when you fell, and you're trying to blame her for your own clumsiness." "There's no security footage that shows what really happened," I protested. Victoria stepped forward from where she'd been lurking in the corner. "Marcus, maybe we should let Sophia rest. The doctor said head injuries can cause confusion and memory problems." The manipulation was masterful. She was giving Marcus a medical excuse to dismiss anything I said while positioning herself as the compassionate voice of reason. "I'm not confused," I said desperately. Marcus, she's been lying to you about everything. Her name, her background, her past. Enough. Marcus stood abruptly. Victoria warned me you might try to blame her for this accident. She said you've been obsessed with destroying our relationship. I have evidence. Court records, employment verification failures, testimonies from her previous victims. Previous victims? Marcus laughed bitterly. Listen to yourself. You sound completely paranoid. Victoria placed a gentle hand on his arm. Sweetheart, maybe we should go. This is clearly too stressful for Sophia right now. Actually, yes. We should go. Marcus looked at me with something approaching disgust. I came here to make sure you were okay, but I can see Victoria was right about your mental state. Marcus, please.
No, Sophia.
I'm done. Victoria has been nothing but patient and kind, trying to include you in our lives despite your obvious resentment. And this is how you repay her? By stalking her and then trying to blame her for your own accident. He pulled out his phone and started typing. I'm sending you a text right now, and I want you to really read it when your head clears. My phone chimed a moment later. Through blurry eyes, I read, Stay away from Victoria and me. Your behavior has become dangerous and unacceptable. Don't contact us again. We're getting married tomorrow, and we don't want you there. Get the help you need. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Tomorrow? They were moving the wedding up even more. Marcus, I whispered, but he was already walking toward the door with Victoria. She paused just long enough to look back at me, with a smile of pure triumph. Then they were gone, leaving me alone with the devastating realization that I had lost my brother completely. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of medical procedures and crushing depression. My parents stayed by my side, bewildered by Marcus's reaction and increasingly concerned about his relationship with Victoria. This isn't like him at all, my mother kept saying. Even if he was angry with you, he wouldn't abandon you in the hospital. I wanted to tell them everything about Victoria's attack, her threats, the evidence I'd gathered. But every time I started to speak, I remembered her warning about making Marcus disappear from my life forever. If I accused her of assault, would that be the final straw that severed our relationship permanently? The evening of what should have been their wedding day, I lay in my hospital bed staring at the ceiling. Were they married now? Was Marcus legally bound to someone who had nearly killed his sister? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's done. He's mine now. Remember our agreement. Victoria was messaging me from a new number, making sure I knew she had won. I was discharged the following morning with strict instructions for concussion recovery and a referral to a neurologist. My parents drove me to their house, insisting I stay with them during my recovery period. For the next week, I existed in a fog of pain medication and despair. The physical injuries were healing, but the emotional trauma seemed insurmountable. I had lost my brother to a predator, and there seemed to be no way to save him. Detective Rivera called to update me on her investigation into Victoria's background. We've confirmed that Victoria Chun is indeed Victoria Chong, and there are multiple outstanding warrants for her arrest in Illinois. However, she seems to have disappeared. The address your brother gave us is fake, and her phone numbers are disconnected. She married my brother, I told her. Yesterday. We'll keep looking, but if she's gone underground with a new identity, it could take time to track her down. That afternoon, my mother was organizing my belongings from the hospital when she found something unexpected in my purse, a small recording device I'd forgotten I was carrying. It was a digital recorder I'd brought to document any conversations with Victoria, though I'd never had the chance to use it. With trembling hands, I turned it on, hoping it might have captured something useful. What I heard made my blood run cold. The device had been recording during my confrontation with Victoria. Her threats, her admission about getting what she wanted, her cold calculation after pushing me. Everything was there in crystal clear audio. Mom, I called, my voice shaking. You need to hear this. We listened together, my mother's face growing pale as Victoria's true nature revealed itself. When the recording ended, my mother was crying. We have to get this to the police immediately, she said. Detective Rivera listened to the recording with intense focus. When it finished, she nodded grimly. This changes everything. We have clear evidence of assault, battery, and criminal threats. With this recording and the outstanding warrants, we can issue an arrest warrant immediately. But she's already married my brother and disappeared, I pointed out. Marriage certificates are public records. We can track where they got married and work from there. People like this usually leave paper trails when they're trying to establish new identities. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time in days. It took the police 3 weeks to track down Victoria and Marcus. They had indeed gotten married, but not in Colorado. Public records showed a marriage certificate filed in Las Vegas the day after my hospitalization, which meant Victoria had lied about the timing to create her alibi. More importantly, financial records showed suspicious activity on Marcus's accounts immediately after the wedding. Large transfers to offshore accounts, new credit cards opened in his name, and applications for loans using his credit history. Detective Rivera called me with the update. We found them in Phoenix, where she was apparently running the same con on another victim while systematically draining your brother's assets. She's been arrested on multiple charges including assault, fraud, and identity theft. What about Marcus? He's confused, to put it mildly. According to the officers who interviewed him, he initially tried to defend Victoria even after being shown evidence of her crimes. But when confronted with the financial records showing how she'd been stealing from him, reality started to set in. My phone rang that evening. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and I stared at it for several rings before finding the courage to answer. Sophia? His voice was barely a whisper. I'm here. God, I don't even know how to begin. The police, they showed me everything. The recording, the financial records, her real background. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. I started crying, months of pain and fear finally releasing. She told me you'd attacked her, he continued. She had bruises on her arms, said you'd grabbed her during some kind of breakdown. She convinced me you were having a psychological crisis brought on by jealousy. The bruises were self-inflicted, I managed to say. She planned the whole thing. I know that now. The police showed me similar cases, other victims who went through the same manipulation. She's a professional, Sophia. This is what she does for a living. We talked for 2 hours, Marcus pouring out the story of how completely Victoria had controlled his life. The constant monitoring, the isolation from friends and family, the gradual erosion of his confidence and independence. I can't believe I chose her over you, he said. You were trying to save me, and I treated you like you were the enemy. She's very good at what she does, I replied. The important thing is that you're safe now. Am I though? She took almost everything, Sophia. My savings, my credit, my sense of reality. I don't even know who I am anymore without her telling me. The road to healing would be long for both of us. Marcus had to rebuild his finances, his credit, and his sense of self. I had to work through the trauma of being attacked and then abandoned by the person I loved most. But we had something Victoria could never take away, the fundamental bond between siblings who had weathered everything life threw at them. 3 months later, Marcus moved back to Denver and into my spare bedroom while he sorted out his life. We started therapy together, working to understand how someone like Victoria could have driven such a wedge between us. Our therapist, Dr. Martinez, explained that predators like Victoria specifically target people with strong family bonds because those relationships represent the biggest threat to their control. She worked systematically to eliminate every source of support and objective perspective in Marcus's life. Dr. Martinez told us during one session. Your love for your brother made you dangerous to her plans, so she had to neutralize you. I should have trusted Sophia from the beginning, Marcus said. I knew her concerns were coming from love, but Victoria had me convinced that love could be possessive and toxic. Manipulation victims often struggle with self-blame, Dr. Martinez replied. But recognizing the patterns helps prevent future exploitation. 6 months after Victoria's arrest, we attended her sentencing hearing. She received 4 years in prison for assault, fraud, and identity theft. During the proceedings, we learned she had victimized at least 12 other people across multiple states, stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars and leaving emotional devastation in her wake. When given the opportunity to make a victim impact statement, I stood up in the courtroom and looked directly at Victoria for the first time since that night she attacked me. "You tried to destroy my family," I said, my voice steady and clear. "You isolated my brother from everyone who loved him, stole his money, and nearly killed me when I tried to protect him. But you failed in the most important way. You didn't break our bond. If anything, you made it stronger." Victoria stared back at me with the same cold detachment I remembered from that night outside her apartment. Even facing prison, she showed no remorse for the lives she'd shattered. After the sentencing, Marcus and I walked out of the courthouse together. The Denver sky was bright blue, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. "You know what I realized during all this?" Marcus said as we got into my car. "What?" "That promise we made as kids, about always having each other's backs? You kept it even when I didn't. You put yourself in danger to protect me, and I'll never forget that." I squeezed his hand. "That's what siblings do." "Not all siblings. We're lucky to have what we have." Our Saturday hiking tradition resumed gradually. At first, the conversations were heavy with processing what we'd been through. But slowly, we began to rediscover the easy companionship that had defined our relationship for so many years. Marcus started dating again about a year later, but with a completely different approach. He introduced potential partners to me and our parents early on, welcomed our opinions, and maintained his independence even while building new relationships. "I'll never let anyone isolate me from my family again," he told me. "And if anyone has a problem with how important you are to me, that tells me everything I need to know about them." I also found love, eventually. A fellow nurse named David, who understood the demands of my career and encouraged my close relationship with Marcus rather than feeling threatened by it. The experience with Victoria changed us both fundamentally. We became advocates for domestic violence awareness, speaking at events about the warning signs of manipulation and control. My story resonated particularly with women who had been dismissed when they tried to warn family members about abusive partners. "People think domestic violence is just physical abuse," I would tell audiences. "But emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, and systematic isolation are just as damaging. And when someone tries to separate you from your support system, that's often the biggest red flag of all." Marcus shared his perspective as a male victim, helping other men recognize that they too could be targets of predatory behavior. "I was successful, confident, and independent," he would explain. "I thought that made me immune to manipulation. But predators like Victoria specifically target successful people because we have more to take. And they're experts at making you feel like the relationship problems are your fault." 2 years after Victoria's sentencing, I received an unexpected letter from her in prison. My hands shook as I opened it, not sure what to expect. The letter was brief and chilling. "Sophia, I want you to know that everything I did was strategic. I studied you and Marcus for weeks before making my first move. Your close relationship was always my biggest obstacle, which is why I had to eliminate you from the equation. I'm genuinely impressed that you figured out as much as you did. You're smarter than most of my victims' families. I'll be out in 2 years with good behavior. I hope you'll remember that." I showed the letter to Detective Rivera, who had become something of a friend over the course of the investigation. "She's trying to intimidate you," the detective said. "It's a common tactic. She wants you to spend the next 2 years afraid instead of living your life. What if she comes after us when she gets out? We'll be monitoring her closely. And frankly, people like Victoria usually move on to easier targets. You and Marcus have proven you're not easy to manipulate or silence." Despite Detective Rivera's reassurances, Marcus and I decided to take precautions. We both took self-defense classes, installed security systems in our homes, and made sure our family and friends were aware of the potential threat. But we refused to let fear control our lives the way Victoria once had. 3 years after that nightmare began, Marcus proposed to Sarah, a teacher he'd met through mutual friends. Their relationship had been slow and steady, built on genuine compatibility rather than artificial intensity. Sarah knew our whole story and understood why family approval was so important to Marcus. She embraced our close sibling relationship and even asked me to be a bridesmaid in their wedding. "I'm not threatened by the bond you two have," she told me during wedding planning. "I'm grateful for it. It means Marcus knows how to love deeply and loyally. Plus, I'm getting not just a husband but a sister who will always have his back." The wedding was everything Victoria's fake celebration hadn't been: genuine, joyful, and surrounded by people who truly loved the couple. During his vows, Marcus looked directly at me when he spoke about the importance of honesty and trust in relationships. "I promise to listen when you're concerned about my well-being," he said to Sarah, "and to never let anyone come between me and the people who have proven their love through their actions." As I watched my brother marry someone who truly deserved him, I felt a deep sense of completion. We had survived the worst kind of betrayal and manipulation and come out stronger on the other side. That night, at the wedding reception, Marcus pulled me aside for a private moment. "I need to thank you again," he said. "Not just for saving me from Victoria, but for showing me what real love looks like. You risked everything to protect me, even when I was cruel to you. You would have done the same for me." "I hope so. But I'm grateful I'll never have to find out." He hugged me tightly. "Promise me something, Soph. Anything. If I ever start acting like that again, if anyone ever tries to isolate me from my family, don't give up on me. Keep fighting, even if I can't see what's happening." "I promise," I said, meaning it completely. "And promise me you'll let me do the same for you, if you ever need it." I promised that too. For years later, Victoria was released from prison. We heard through Detective Rivera that she had violated her parole within 6 months and was back in custody for attempting to scam an elderly man in Florida. "Some people never change," the detective told us. "But some do. You two are proof of that." Marcus and Sarah now have 2 children, and I'm their favorite aunt. Their son, James, is named after our grandfather, and their daughter carries my middle name, Elena. When they're old enough, we'll tell them the story of how their family almost fell apart but held together through love and determination. Sometimes I touch the small scar on my temple, a permanent reminder of that terrible night when Victoria showed her true nature. But instead of feeling angry or afraid, I feel proud. That scar represents the moment I refused to back down from protecting someone I loved, even at great personal cost. The experience taught me that real family bonds can withstand almost anything: manipulation, lies, even violence. None of it could ultimately break the connection Marcus and I had built over a lifetime of mutual support and genuine love. People sometimes ask if I regret investigating Victoria, if I wish I'd minded my own business, and avoided the confrontation that nearly cost me my life. The answer is always no. I would do it again in a heartbeat. Because that's what family does. We protect each other. We tell each other the truth even when it's hard to hear, and we never give up on the people we love, even when they've given up on themselves. Victoria tried to teach us that love was possession, that caring meant control, that family bonds were obstacles to overcome. But she was wrong about everything. Real love sets people free. Real caring respects boundaries. And real family bonds are not obstacles, they're the foundation that everything else is built on. Marcus and I learned that lesson the hard way, but we learned it together. And that makes all the difference. The last time we hiked together before I started writing this story, Marcus paused at the overlook where we used to sit as children, planning our futures and promising to always be there for each other. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't figured out who Victoria really was?" he asked. I considered the question seriously. "I think you would have figured it out eventually. Maybe not in time to save your finances or avoid emotional damage, but eventually. People like Victoria can't maintain their masks forever. But by then, she might have succeeded in cutting me off from everyone who loved me." Maybe. But I like to think love finds a way. Even if it had taken years, even if she had taken you across the country, I would have kept trying to reach you. He smiled and squeezed my shoulder. "I know you would have. That's why she was so afraid of you." As we started back down the trail, I reflected on how much we'd both grown from the experience. We were stronger individually and as siblings. We'd learned to recognize red flags, to trust our instincts, and to never take our relationship for granted. Most importantly, we'd learned that sometimes the people we love most need us to be brave enough to tell them difficult truths, even when they don't want to hear them. If you're reading this story and recognize similar patterns in your own life or the life of someone you care about, please don't stay silent. Speak up, even if it's uncomfortable. Research your concerns, gather evidence, and present it with love rather than accusation. And if someone you trust is expressing concerns about your relationship, consider the possibility that they might be seeing something you can't. Love can be blinding, but it can also be illuminating when it comes from the right people. Victoria is still in prison and will be for several more years. Sometimes I wonder if she's learned anything from her experience, if she's developed any capacity for remorse or self-reflection. Probably not. People like her rarely change. But people like Marcus and me? We can change. We can grow. We can learn from our mistakes and become stronger, wiser, more compassionate. We can choose to build relationships based on trust rather than control, on genuine love rather than manipulation. And we can choose to protect the people we care about, even when it's difficult, even when it's dangerous, even when they can't see that they need protection. That's what real family does. And nothing, not manipulation, not lies, not even violence, can change that fundamental truth. Today, Marcus and I are closer than we've ever been. We've been through fire together and emerged not just intact, but stronger. We know now that our bond can survive anything, and that knowledge gives us the confidence to live fully, love deeply, and trust wisely. Victoria tried to teach us that love was weakness. Instead, she proved that love is the strongest force in the world. And for that lesson, as painful as it was to learn, I'm almost grateful. Have you ever had to fight for someone you loved who couldn't see they were in danger? Have you ever had to forgive someone who chose a manipulator over you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, real love doesn't isolate, it connects. Real love doesn't control, it liberates. And real family bonds aren't obstacles to overcome, but foundations to build upon. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories about overcoming adversity and protecting the people we love. Thank you for walking through this difficult journey with me. Remember, you are stronger than you know, and love really can conquer all.